This lesson is on caring for your multi-grafted fruit trees. And in this lesson specifically, I'm going to share with you my multi-grafted stone fruit trees, fig trees, citrus trees, olive trees, and apple trees. But these principles and lessons shared with you today are my top 5 tips for caring for regardless of whatever plants you've got on your property that are grafted. I hope you enjoy this one. Hi, my name is Charles Malki, a biologist and plant expert with Apricots, where we grow cool plants, and author of Saving the World with the Home Garden. And today I'm seated in front of my 5-in-1 grafted stone fruit tree. Grafts that we did together here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel, and links to all of these trees where I'll show you and demonstrate the grafting techniques and methods I use in accomplishing these various grafted fruit trees that are here on my property. The first one that I've got here behind me has grafted onto it peaches, both Red Baron and Babcock peaches, as well as plums, the burgundy plum, the royal apricot, and it's also got grafted onto it pluots, which is a combination of the plu being plum and ot for the apricot. So it's a plum apricot fruit, and you're gonna see all of that in just a minute. Let's get started with my tip number 1, which is removing sucker growth. The sucker growth is generally just unwanted growth. The first type of growth you got to remove is that growth that's below the grafted union, which is the growth that's happening on the rootstock. And that's exactly what's happening here, which is this plum rootstock, which is now about 8 to 9 feet tall and surpassing all the growth of the grafted unions. And in general, the rootstock will grow about 5 to 10% more vigorously than the grafted branches. And so it's very important to remove all of that growth below the grafted union, because this is all additional resources that have been consumed and taken away to the detriment of the grafted branches. So we're going to immediately remove that sucker growth coming off of the rootstock. Additionally, we're going to remove sucker growth that's below the grafted union as well, going up the branch, so that all of those resources go towards the grafted union and not again to the detriment of that growth below the graft. So to demonstrate, what we're going to do first, and what's the most obvious, is to remove that sucker growth that's coming off the rootstock. So follow me into the canopy of this fruit tree. So this here is part of the plum rootstock, and as you can see, it's easily movable in the initial stages. When this was a young tree, as you can see, this is just a single tree trunk, which has 3 branches that we grafted with 3 flavors of fruit trees. Right at this point, you can see how this is all plum, and the plum then transitions to apricot. You can see that the wood is different. It's also been protected with the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard, which I'll demonstrate at the end. But this here is apricot. You can see just below the grafted union, there's more plum. As you can see, this is the plum leaf growth, whereas just above it, you can see the round apricot leaf growth, which I'm going to be showing more details of the grafted fruit trees. But what we're going to do real quick as we're removing the sucker growth is we're going to cut all of this out. And if you take a look real close, check out how large this sucker growth wood is. And I'm going to come in here with my pruners, and we're going to prune that out just like so. And now if you step back, you can see how much we've just removed out of this plant structure. All of this is sucker growth, taking nutrients, minerals, and water from the desired grafted flavors of fruit trees. And now let's check out the different trees that we've got in this one. As you can take a look here, indicated by the red young growth, we've got apricot with the rounder leaves. If we go into the canopy a little further, you can see just behind me are the Babcock peaches. Check those peaches out. And you can see the peach leaves, a lot different compared to the apricot rounder leaves. And then as we come through, over here is the pluot. So if you take a look down below, together we grafted this in the late winter, and you can see how well that's grafted onto the below rootstock, also of a plum variety. And then just behind that, if we can pull these out of the way, we've got the burgundy plum over here. And then over here is the red Baron peach. So another variety of peach with beautiful, magnificent red, double red flowers. So we've just removed 2 of the suckers off the rootstock. If you come in a little closer, there's just a few more to go. So now on this side over here is the plum rootstock. We've grafted onto it the red barren peach, which is above this joint union over here. As you can see, also the same thing over here. This here is the pluot grafted on top of that plum rootstock as well. What we're gonna do is we're going to now prune any of the sucker growth below the grafted union. So here we go, removing that sucker growth. And we're gonna continue removing the sucker growth down the branch, because again, we want all of those nutrients and elements and water and everything to support the grafted unions and not this sucker growth below. So we're gonna drive all of the energy into the grafted wood. So this is gonna be the next step of part of tip number 1, removing all of the sucker growth. So as we're cleaning up all of the sucker growth, you can see we've cleaned the pathway up to the pluot, we've cleared the pathway to the red barren peach, and now there's another pathway in this branch over here with a ton of growth that's leading to this grafted over here, another variety pluot. So what we're gonna do now is simply remove again all of that sucker growth leading to the grafted union. And again, the sucker growth will grow to the detriment of the grafted union if it's not managed. And there we go. So here we've got grafted pluot. This one over here is sucker growth. Notice how it's competing against the pluot over here. So now we're going to remove the sucker growth over here. And now notice we've got burgundy plum. Again, this was grafted at this point down below. Burgundy plum. This branch we're keeping. And then the rest of the burgundy plum has now turned into pluot over here, red barren peaches on this side. Not all grafts are created equally vigorous. In this tip number 2 of balancing the strengths between your grafted wood, it's important to watch and monitor the success of the grafted unions, especially on a multi-grafted fruit tree. It is known, for example, in the citrus family, that lemons and grapefruit are significantly faster growing and more vigorous growing than the counterpart orange trees. Here behind me is an example of new growth that has happened since spring. If you check out the apricot branches, and I've got here my measuring tape, you can follow the new growth down to the brown wood, which was last year's growth. And if you come in closer, you can see as we measure the apricot, you can see that since spring growth, it has grown nearly 3 feet. Whereas if you take a look back here, the Babcock peach, the growth wood is that brown wood, which is where the peaches are coming off of. And if you measure that new growth, the new growth is measuring about 1 foot. Significant difference. The apricot is growing about 3 times faster than the peaches on this tree. So what we're going to do now is balance the strength by pruning the apricot back and allowing the peaches to now catch up, and closely monitoring that growth from month to month throughout the year. And it's important to visit these trees and at least keep them in check, I would say at least twice throughout the year during the growing part of the year. And then you're going to revisit your plant in late winter when you can do the major pruning of those branches that are over 2 years old. But all of this control is happening just on the new growth and things that you're going to be doing throughout the growing season to make sure that one particular flavor, in this instance, the apricot, doesn't dominate over the peaches and plums. To balance the strength between the flavors on this grafted fruit tree, all we're simply doing is bringing the growth tips down. So in this instance, I'm simply cutting it down just a few inches. That's going to give the peaches that are already growing to continue growing while these tips now readjust themselves and begin growing again. Here's another growth tip, and I'm simply cutting it back about 6 inches. Nothing too dramatic. These branches that are growing down, I can either stake them to reshape them in the desired direction, or we can simply prune them out. This branch back here that's growing towards the wall, again, we can either restake it upright, but the goal is we're creating, I'm going to show you in just a moment, this vase shaped pattern where each of the branches are going to be growing in their designated area of sunlight, which will ultimately support maximum fruit yields as early as next year. And that's summer pruning. What you'll see here now is a red Baron peach capitalizing on light, maximum airflow for disease resistance, and also optimal fruit yields. Behind it, the Pluots, behind that, the Burgundy plum, over here, Babcock peach, and now you can see that the Royal Apricot has its own designated area, and they're all pretty much in equal percentages, all respecting each of the 5 separate grafts on this single rootstock. Tip number 3 is to graft near or within the heart of the tree. Just behind me here is another fruit tree that I've got grafted with 10 flavors of figs, from brown figs to black figs to purple figs to green figs, and even that tiger panache fig are all growing on a single rootstock. Let me share with you how, and demonstrating also the importance of grafting near the heart of the tree. And the heart of the tree I always define as the tree trunk, lower branches, but if you're simply grafting on a branch tip, then you're only going to get inches of growth like what's happening over here. But if you graft closer to the heart of the tree, you'll get feet of growth instead of simply inches. Check this out. So this here is my Grandpa Saman green fig variety. It's a honey green fig, and this was originally the tree trunk, and it grew about 6 to 8 feet before it branched out into the different branches supporting the Grandpa Saman green fig. What we then did was prune it just a few inches off the ground. It created the 2 branches, which with staking, which I'm going to demonstrate in my next tip, we pulled the 2 branches apart, and from there, those 2 branches we grafted at this point, and again at this point, and at that point. So we grafted at about 18 inches off the ground with 1, 2, 3, that's the graft, 4 is another graft, and 5. So these were the 5 flavors, and then when those branches flared out, we then grafted another 5 more flavors onto those figs. So we've got a total of 10 figs basically growing in the footprint of a single tree. This is an awesome way to enjoy a lot of flavors without having to plant 10 fig trees, which would hog up pretty much your entire garden space. Grafting tip number 1, as we already said, is to remove the sucker growth, but I just want to share with you, you can see how easy this young growth can be bent, as we did over here to create this vase-shaped 3-in-1 apple tree. And then go into tip number 3, you can see that we then grafted near the heart of the tree. This particular graft is right here where I'm holding. This here is the Gala red apple. We're now grafting onto it 2 more flavors of apples, including the Fuji apple, and then on this side we've got grafted on the Dorset golden apple. So we've got these 2 varieties that are now through the approach grafting. Going to be adding 3 flavors of apple over here. This one over here is my childhood favorite unnamed apple variety, which is a reddish green variety. And then to my left, also grafted just about 18 inches off the ground, right where I'm holding here, is the Granny Smith apples, and you can see the apples that are growing there. But again, the example being throughout the year, you're going to have to remove the sucker growth. To make sure that all those resources, when you go to feed the tree and fertilize your plants, that it's not going towards sucker growth, but going to benefit the grafted flavor of apples. And check out all of these apples we've got growing on here. So this is my tip number 4, is using stakes to optimize on light and air flow throughout your tree, again for optimal plant health and also ultimately fruit yield. As you can see here, this is my 4-in-1 olive tree, which I've got grafted onto a Italian Toscana variety. Just behind it, the Koroniki Greek variety. Just behind that over here is the original rootstock, and I've left a branch to come off the root of the Manzanilla Spanish variety. And just here in front of me is my most recent graft, which I did about a year ago, which is the California Native Mission variety of olive. And if you take a look a little closer, you can see that what we've done is we created this vase-shaped structure, something that would not have happened on its own, but was accomplished through the use of stakes. We've got this branch, and then this branch. You can see where the grafted union is. Again, protected with the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard, a 3rd branch, and then the 4th branch. And through staking, this branch was originally growing to the ground, but we've been using the stakes to steer the direction of the branches into the desired direction where we want these branches to be, which is going to be in this open space over here. So the mission olive will be growing here, and then all the other countries of olives will be growing in that space using this vase-shaped structure, which was only accomplished through the use of stakes. So here's another example using stakes. If you take a look at this branch, you can see it's bending almost as a rainbow. It's bending around and then into this position over here through the use of stakes, which I've got right here in this position, growing to the ground, and then basically controlling and steering these branches to grow in that light zone where we want the branch to be for its indefinite future here on our property. So now revisiting the 5-in-1 grafted stone fruit tree, what we're doing now is tying the twine against the stake and not against the tree. We're simply securing the twine, and now instead of the apricot, for example, to grow in a vertical straight up position, we want it to grow vase shape away from the center, and its zone is over here, and we're redirecting the branch to harden right here in this direction. And there we go. That's how we've accomplished all of our successful multi-grafted fruit trees here on the property, so far applying these 4 helpful tips that I've shared with you. And now off to tip number 5. Once the branch is growing and now strengthened and hardened in the desired direction that you want that branch to grow, you can then remove the stake. So you can see that we're using stakes throughout the entire life of the tree to accomplish our objectives. And as you can see, the branch is now hardened into that vase-shaped structure that we want it to be. The younger branches, we're still continuously using stakes to accomplish that desired shape. And now let's get on to step number 5. So it's midsummer now and the plant is growing, and we're gonna wanna make sure that it has all of the elements necessary for optimal plant growth. The Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers offer your plants not just the NPK, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. As you can read here, it contains all of the primary nutrients, your NPK, but also contains all of the secondary nutrients, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, calcium for all the plant cell walls, very important for also preventing that blossom end rot on your tomatoes. And then magnesium, which is the heart of the chlorophyll molecule, and then sulfur, another important element for the greening of the plant. So it's got all of that, plus it also includes azomite, and azomite is crushed volcanic rock. And just imagine all those plants in Hawaii that are thriving on all of those micronutrients that are being delivered. So it has all of the 6 macronutrients plus all of the micronutrients in the Ivory Organic Super Blend fertilizers. And then the premium blend just has a lower NPK as indicated here. And so we're continuously feeding our plants during the summer months, as light hours are now approaching 14 hours of daylight compared to winter, which are only at 10. So with all this additional light, the plant's metabolism is peaking, fruit is peaking, growth is peaking. You're gonna wanna make sure all those elements are in the soil so you get optimal plant growth. And now for tip number 5 is making sure you're protecting your grafted wounds on your grafted, multi-grafted fruit tree. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna protect it using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard protection against damaging summer sunburn, as well as winter sun scald and insects and rodents, and it's also OMRI listed for organic use. Instead of using latex paint and tar-based products, which if you put on your plants as the plants grow, are gonna end up contaminating your soil indefinitely, as those products are designed to last forever. But what we're gonna do now is protect the plant using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard, and specifically, this is our newest release, is color greige, which is a very natural looking product. The product is available in colors white and brown and green and gray, and this is the latest and greatest color, greige. And let's take a look at what it looks like on the plant. So as you can see, we're gonna be protecting all of these pruned branches. Take a look at all of this light, which was once in the shade as well. As we just did summer pruning, it's important that you also protect the plant from both first, second, as well as 3rd-degree sunburns. We don't want the plant putting its resources towards repairing sunburn damage, but instead putting its resources towards growth and supporting fruit production. So you can see this is now the color greige going on. We've covered also all of those pruned branches to keep beetles and termites from penetrating those coated surfaces. And if you were using latex and tar-based products on those pruned branches, the risk is that you're trapping moisture, and that's going to result in underlying rot. This product, Ivory Organic, dries on the plants porously, which creates a much healthier protection to the plant. For those of you that have been watching our grafting success, this here again is the Plua being grafted onto a plum rootstock. We originally had it wrapped in fishing twine, as you can see, evidenced by those lines, those teeny lines that were on top of that Ivory Organic 3-in-1 color white. Right now we're gonna cover it with the greige, but first I'm gonna take off this supporting nylon twine that I have on the graft. Every few weeks, the thing's expanding so fast, you can see that it's digging into the graft. You gotta make sure we don't harm the graft. So we're taking this off now for the rest of its life. We may end up staking the branch above to make sure that if there's a bird or an animal that lands on this graft, since again, it's a weak union, which is only gonna get stronger from year to year, but we don't want any pressure on it in the first year, especially for those of you that see fruit coming off of grafted wood. Immediately take that off, as that's gonna offer undue stress onto that grafted union. It's kind of like a broken arm, and we're gonna wanna protect the grafted union like so. And now we're just simply applying the greige on top of the color white. And you can see the difference on how beautiful this product looks on the plant. And I'll put a link to where you can find these products in the video description below. So this here is our grafted fig. This was a cleft graft. As you can see, we only grafted on the back side, but the front of the split wood is exposed, and we're going to want to now seal it as well with the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard to protect it against disease and pests entering that wood. And as you can see, this is grafted variety fig called Saint Rita, and now we're going to simply brush the product into there. Again, you would not want to be doing this with tar nor with latex paint, as that's going to contribute additional moisture into that grafting wound and contribute towards rot. Now we're going to be basically preventing both disease and pests from inhibiting and contributing any damage to this newly grafted wood. So the 5 helpful tips that we just discussed is 1, remove the sucker growth. 2, not all grafts are created equal, and to balance the strength between the multi-grafts. 3, graft near the heart of the tree, being near the tree trunk, near the lower branches, not on the grafting towards the tips of the plant, so that you accomplish feet of growth instead of inches. 4 is using stakes to train the tree to grow in that open vase shape to allow maximum light and air penetration for optimal health of the tree and maximum fruit production and quality. And tip number 5 is protecting your grafting wounds, as well as protecting your plant from damaging summer sunburn, especially after summer pruning, as we just did, using the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard protection, again, for optimal plant health, performance, and longevity. All of the lessons to all of the fruit trees that you've seen here on our property, I'm going to be giving you links to how we accomplish those grafting techniques and lessons in the video description below, as well as I'm going to create a category here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel labeled grafting and grafting lessons, so where you can see all of these trees and how they've been created over the years here on our property. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please be sure to give us that thumbs up, and most importantly, share us with your gardening friends and family. And as always, keep growing with Ivory Organics. Wishing you all happy gardening. Say bye, Chuck Chuck. Say bye. Say bye, guys. Whoop. See ya. Don't girdle my trees anymore. Oh no.